Stock Exchange, the site of one of the many ghastly bomb attacks in 1993. Yakub Memon was amongst the people responsible for those attacks. Today, he has met his fate. His sentencing has been carried out. But there's only one time that Yakub Memon has actually spoken to the people of India. This was in an interview that was done by Madhu Trehan for Newstrack, a news magazine, a television news magazine run by the India Today group. What we'll do right now is get you the very fascinating backstory. We've seen the interview, but how did this interview get set up? And were there really assurances that were made to Yakub Memon about how he might be allowed to get away? Did we backtrack from those assurances? I'll ask Madhu, who is really in the thick of things, investigating this case herself, and get her to answer some of this. But before that, just for our viewers who haven't seen the interview yet, very quickly, a brief excerpt from Yakub Memon's only television interview, and then I get you the backstories.
You have 2 passports, right? Which you say was forced down your throat. Your identity card was forced down your throat.
Everything was forced down.
Your school leaving certificate was forced down your throat.
Everything was forced down, and I accepted with only intention that they should feel now that I am not a danger to them. And that way I could collect the income.
When did you get to know about your brother's involvement in the bomb blast?
On reaching Karachi, after I had a long discussion with Tiger that why you have called me here. So he later on explained me all these things. He said,
around
now,
what date was that?
That was around 20th March
20th?
when we were staying at Tawfiq's Jallianwala bungalow.
I see. So it was about 10 days after the blast.
Yes, 10 days after the blast.
So at that time, 10 days after the blast, why didn't you come to India then?
That was not possible that time.
Why not?
It was not possible because
you talked about your loyalty to your motherland. Where was your loyalty when you went off with some other country's passport? With taking their hospitality.
Right.
You have enjoyed a massive house and everything else that they've given you.
Right.
And you're saying that they forced all this luxury down your throat?
Yes.
You know, there are a lot of people who'd like that kind of luxury forced down their throat. Nobody is going to believe this story. It is highly implausible that all this luxury is being forced down your throat, and you're expected to people are expected to believe that you are innocent.
I'm not expecting anything from the people. I just want to put the facts to the people, let them decide. I'm not.
And the facts that are being put in front is that you have a dual identity. You've lived there since March.
This is the tip of the iceberg. Let all the facts come in front of the people and let the people decide.
Let's go back to that first question. Why didn't you come to your motherland, as you call it, and report your brother if you were against what he did?
See, because right from that day, we were confined to houses. Around 4 or 5 guards.
How could you run businesses with confined to houses? You were running a successful business.
That was later on. And even that
all right,
time,
then later on, why didn't you do it?
This was the right time to come, and I have come.
But you had a good, how long is it? How long is it since March 11th of 93?
If it had taken me 10 years also, I would have waited for 10 years to do this thing.
Well, you were enjoying a very good life while waiting for it.
I was not enjoying. If I would have enjoyed this life, why should I come here now? Why should I come here?
You've come here because, you tell us, why have you come here?
Just to show the people who are behind this blast. And it is not Memon family who is behind these things.
You are expecting...
And I know who are the people behind it. I know the exact addresses. And I know the Pakistani government involvement. That's what I want to say to the international community.
I want to go across now to Madhu Trehan. She is now the editor-in-chief of newslaundry.com. At the time when this interview was done, she ran Newstrack. She's one of the pioneers of television journalism in India and the only TV journalist who actually interviewed Yakub Memon face-to-face. There were some other print interviews, but not another face-to-face interview. Madhu, welcome to the newsroom on the day that Yakub Memon was executed. Tell our viewers, looking back into your memory, what impression you came away with after having spent time with one of the key architects of the Mumbai terror attacks?
I came away rather frustrated because I felt that I hadn't been able to crack him. He had his pat answers which he kept repeating over and over again. He wouldn't go beyond a certain point. So it was clear that he had prepared himself that he was going to give a certain amount of information, but definitely not more than that.
Now, there's been a lot of back and forth around the circumstances leading up to Yakub Memon coming to India, where people like B. Raman wrote that maybe his coming to India was part of a larger deal with the intelligence agencies, and at some level India let him down because we'd made some kind of an assurance telling him that the courts would not come after him or that he would get a good deal, which ultimately he didn't get because he's now been executed. You were the thick of things at Newstrack at that time. You were also speaking to several of the officials who were investigating this case. Is what B. Raman saying, is it true, ma'am?
First of all, if B. Raman said that in that article, please run it next to my image and show me where he said that. He has not said that. People keep repeating the same question. It's like, when did you stop beating your wife? Nowhere in the article did he say that a deal was made. Nowhere has he said an assurance was given. Nowhere has he said any of the questions that you've asked me. So please read that article and please run.
But he does
if
say,
he has said that,
let me
please run
quote
it
to
next
you
to me.
what he says in this letter.
What does he say? Read it.
Let me
Read
quote
it.
to you what he says, Madhu. He says, I was disturbed to notice that some mitigating
Yes.
circumstances in the case of Yakub Memon and other members of the family were not brought to the notice of the court by the prosecution, and the prosecution did not suggest to the court that these circumstances should be taken into consideration while deciding on the punishment to be awarded to them. In their eagerness to obtain the death penalty, the fact that there were mitigating circumstances do not appear to have been highlighted. Now, you're correct when you say he doesn't specify what these mitigating circumstances
how are
but
you
he was
interpreting?
also a former research
I'm
and
sorry.
analysis wing
How
official.
is-
I'm
how
asking
are
you a
you-
question. Now, I'm only asking you a question, and I want to know your answer to that. He's suggesting that there were mitigating circumstances which the intelligence agencies that were involved in this case knew about, but which were not presented by the prosecution to the judges. That's essentially what he's saying. I just read out to you what he said.
Yeah, so then why don't you ask me the question about mitigating circumstances? You asked me the question about a deal was made, assurances were given. He hasn't written that.
My question is,
What were
that
the mitigating
B. Raman in this
circumstances?
letter
I'm
writes
telling you,
that there were
it's-
mitigating circumstances. What could these mitigating circumstances have been in your view, ma'am? And were they considered adequately or not?
I'll tell you, there is no guarantee that the mitigating circumstances were assurances or a deal. All right? It's guesswork. So he's written it vaguely and everybody has jumped to conclusions.
In the way that TV journalism is right now, an interview with a terrorist is not something that's happened in a very long while, but this is also at a time when television journalism is in its infancy in India. How did an interview of this nature get set up where a television journalist gets an opportunity to meet a person who's as critical in an investigation that is as important as the Mumbai blast probe? How did that come about?
Okay, I will answer that question, but before that, please tell me, why is nobody in the press asking the question about the sentence that B. Raman wrote, that I have no iota, there is no iota of doubt that he is guilty? Why don't you focus on that sentence? Why are you all focusing on an assurance which he
No,
hasn't
I think that's
written
an
about?
important point that you're making. And that point you've made, and I think our viewers have heard that.
Okay.
If
Now,
I could
how
just
did I
draw
get
you
that
back,
interview?
Madhu, to how
Yeah.
the backstory to setting up this interview.
All right.
Yes.
So how did I get that interview? All right. It was, at that time, as you know, Doordarshan was on studio news reports that were read. There was no footage being shown anywhere. There were laws that you could not broadcast like you have channels. There was only channel was Doordarshan. There was no CNN. There was nothing, no other channel. So we circumvented that by creating video cassettes. In that, Newstrack did a number of scoops where we interviewed terrorists for the first time in 1989 when we were told that terrorists did not exist. We got them on camera. In fact, at that time, the Home Minister asked for me and your boss to be arrested for it. Rajiv Gandhi told them to run along. We also got a kidnapped victim, a Kashmiri Pandit, who was still in the custody of the terrorists. We interviewed him, Alpana Kishore interviewed him and came back while the security forces, our security forces, were still looking for him. So getting Yakub Memon while he was in custody was part of that kind of journalism.
Well, it's been very fascinating to chat with you about the most important and the only Yakub Memon interview. Thank you very much, Madhu Trehan, for joining us on the newsroom. Thank you. We're slipping into a quick break right now. When we come back, India says its final goodbye to the people's president. You're watching.